Welcome to another episode of Decaf Socially Distanced. My voice almost cracked there. That was so awkward. I'm Taylor. This is Mark. I, as usual, have black coffee. Mark, what do you have?
I'm doing a watermelon Red Bull today. I'm really into watermelon flavored stuff. I don't like watermelon itself. I like watermelon jelly. I love like watermelon like mojitos, and they're really good.
That's the one flavor that I won't. I don't like banana or watermelon. I like just pure citrus. Like I want like a lime or lemon or orange or grapefruit. Like that's what I want.
I think grapefruit's the grossest. I don't get why people like grapefruit so much. I think grapefruit, anything, it's awful.
I love grapefruit. The grapefruit, the joy. Honestly, I know because the White Claws, people hate grapefruit White Claw, which means that I get them all to myself.
Like, it's nice when you like stuff other people don't. Like when I'm like, oh, I guess everyone likes funnel cake, but I like more funnel cake than everyone else. So when they're like, oh, I have extra, I'm like, well, I'll eat it.
And then the orange Skittles. Everyone hates the orange Skittles and the orange Starburst, and I love them.
Oh, see, I'm okay with those. The yellow ones, I was never into.
Oh, I love that. I love lemon, though. Like lemon, everything I love.
I have an important question. I am not sure that any of the Skittles taste any different. I've talked to this about people. I think they're all the same flavor because when you put them in your mouth, I think they're just different colors. Starburst, you can tell a difference. If there's a difference in Skittles, it's minimal.
Okay, I actually agree with you, but I do think there is a difference. I think that the red and the purple taste exactly the same, and I think the green, orange, and yellow taste exactly the same. Like, I think that you break them up between like berries, which apple's not really a berry, but like the grape and cherry, and then the citrus ones. I think
we need to have a nationwide discussion whether Skittles are different flavors or not. I feel like this is something that we need to take on. I want to ask people, because Starburst, you can obviously tell the difference. And like jelly beans, you can obviously tell the difference, things like that. But like you could have a big handful of about 15 Skittles put in your mouth and it all tastes the same.
That, and also I think that we should have a nationwide blind taste test on light beers, because my neighbors and I did a light beer blind taste test. We did 6 light beers, and I could not tell the difference in any one of them.
See, I don't agree with that. I think that there is some. I think you said Miller Lite, Bud Light, but I can always tell a big difference. I have like Coors Light, or I have like a crappier version. Like I'm like, this Natty or like this Ice House is not good.
Right. So we did Coors, which I could tell because I hate the taste of it.
Me
Miller,
too.
Bud Light, Busch Light, PBR, and Natty.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell any of the other ones.
I think Busch Light is actually one that I agree. Like you're surprised if it actually does taste like this. And Natty's not super far off. So I could actually tell the biggest difference from Coors because I think Coors is also not good.
Coors is hot garbage.
I will drink it. I'm going to be clear, but I don't like it.
Oh, I would rather drink water than Coors because at least water doesn't have calories.
What about sewer water?
I would drink sewer water over Coors.
Well, they're probably made from the same thing. So okay.
I would go outside and take a straw to a gutter on the side of the road before I would drink Coors.
Gross.
That is nasty. Let's talk about what we actually came here to talk about. So the Tennessee Senate race has happened. I was at the beach and I voted early. But I'll talk about my early voting experience. But Mark, why don't you give us kind of a rundown of what happened in the primaries?
Yeah, so I think that there were surprises in both sides, Republican and Democrat, just in different ways. So on the Republican side, Bill Hagerty, who's the former ambassador to Japan and ECD commissioner, won pretty handily against Dr. Manny Sethi, who is in the Tennessee legislature. Everyone had this being a really close race. Trump had endorsed Hagerty, Cruz, Rand Paul, some other conservatives had endorsed Sethi, and it kind of seemed like it was a 3 or 4 point race. I mean, I was wrong in my prediction there, but it kind of seemed like a coin toss going down to the end, and Hagerty won really handily. So I mean, you can tell that he had a much better get out the vote plan. He had people in place. So that's when you see polls that are like, oh, it's a 3 or 4 point race. And it seemed like to many the momentum was on Sethi's side. And then he goes and wins by 10 or 12 points. He obviously had a very good ground game. He was very well prepared. And that was kind of a surprise to me. Not that he won, but how big he won. I mean, do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I was shocked. We were at the beach and my mom, we were having dinner that night and my mom said, what do you think is going to happen? And I told her what you said. I was like, well, Mark's the betting guy and he's been telling me the odds of this, that, and the other. So I think it'll be about 3 or 4 points. And then by the time we finished dinner and it was 11 points, I was really surprised. I was like, wow, I've never been this far off.
Yeah, I looked to predict it right before. They basically had Hagerty with a 60% chance of winning and Sethi with a 40% chance. It seemed like Hagerty was a slight underdog or a slight favorite. And yeah, it turned out crazy. And then even more insane on the Democratic side was Marquita Bradshaw won the Senate seat. She was kind of an unknown. I think she raised like $11,000, where a lot of her opponents raised much more money. And obviously she had this base that nobody really knew about. She obviously ran an incredible campaign for the money. I mean, when you say winning a Senate primary, like $11,000, I mean, you can't win a county commission seat for $11,000.
I know.
Really, really impressive. And it was just, to a lot of people, it was surprising. Just because, I mean, obviously we've not seen her commercials at all, right? I mean, like she really has been nowhere, but she obviously had this grassroots support and won somewhat handily. I mean that had to surprise you too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is why I love elections in sports, though. That you can put candidates ahead in polling, you can put teams ahead in the coaches poll or in the rankings, whatever. But you never know what's going to happen until you play the game. You don't know what's going to happen until the Saturday the football game is played. You don't know what's going to happen until the Tuesday or Thursday that the election happens. That's why it's just so interesting to me, is because even the most ill-prepared team or the lowest fundraising candidate can come from behind and win. And that's why I love watching it. And I know that candidates take things very seriously. They spend a lot of money, but it's almost like watching a game to me. And I really do love it.
It is, and I mean, and speaking of that, I mean, James Mackler, who was the lead, I think he spent $2.1 million to win this Senate primary, and I'm assuming that based on what I've looked at, it looks like his team was kind of saving that money for the general and hiring all these consultants and stuff. And then, I mean, that's what happens. Like, just like you said with sports, you can't look past them just because he was a big favorite. And I mean, he seemed like a great candidate on paper with the military background and everything else, but Marquita Bradshaw obviously had the momentum, and there's been a lot of national stories written about her. I do think she'll raise some money. I think there's going to be probably some national progressives and Democratic things again involved. It's still Tennessee, so I'm not sure that it's going to matter, but it's still interesting seeing that. And it shows you that money doesn't buy elections. We've heard for years, especially from the left, that money buys elections. It doesn't.
No.
The people who are outspending other people don't win a lot of times. I mean, I think I read in the last 4 presidential races, the candidate who spent less in every race is the one who actually won the race. So you still have to have a message. You still need to convince voters money is not enough. And in Minnesota, I'm sure you saw Representative Omar won, and I mean, she won pretty handily, which was expected, but her opponent outspent her like 5-1.
Right.
So money is important. But so you need to have a message that people on either side can get behind. And whether I agree with you or not, you need to have a message that brings your base out, and that you have to be an appealing candidate.
Well, and you have to motivate voters. I think that something that's really interesting right now for me on Instagram, I don't really watch television, so I didn't see any of Bradshaw's ads, but what I did see was on Instagram, people were really doing that kind of like grassroots reposting on their stories, getting people out to vote. A lot of my friends, this is a really unique time in civic engagement. A lot of people that I know that I actually had them registered to vote, like as an adult, they've never voted before, are posting things about going out and early voting. And I went out and early voted, and I had to wait in line. I went on a Saturday morning and had to wait in line to early vote. I pulled from the Tennessee, and right before the election, they had said that over 578,000 people had early voted in Tennessee before the primary. I mean, that's huge. That's really going to bring more people out. Like people like me who were at the beach for the election, I would have gotten absentee, but instead I went out and early voted and then got my Chick-fil-A and then went and worked out. Like it's a really great thing that we do here in Tennessee, where we can enable people to get out and vote early, vote when there's not as big of a crowd on election day if you are afraid of COVID. I think it's really interesting, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out in November. Will we be voting by mail? Will more people early vote when there's not huge crowds? We'll see.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because, I mean, I think that generally voting by mail, I don't think that really makes sense. But I think that one of the things with COVID being a real issue right now is having early voting allows people to spread out. You know, you're not forcing everyone to go on one day. Tennessee has this great system where, I mean, basically, I think for this, we had like 3 weeks to vote. And not only do we have 3 weeks to vote, there's all these different sites. I mean, I went to the Hermitage Library. There was just a random day at 2, and there's 3 people in front of me. Guess what? If you're worried about COVID, that's a great way to do it, where, I mean, there's 3 people there, and the library shut down anyway. So,
I went to Delmead City Hall, and they had me poking the screen with a cocktail straw. Did they do that?
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, so there is ways, and I think that's we can get into that at a different time. But this you have to vote by mail to protect people isn't actually necessarily true, and there's a lot of other ways to do it. And I think that early voting is a great way. And coming to Tennessee, it's one of the first states that I've ever lived in that has had this, so it's really great for me that I don't have to wait 2 hours to vote.
Yeah, I love it. I've loved being able to early vote in elections, and we got to the beach, and my mom was like, "What did you do? Did you absentee ballot?" And I was like, "No, I just went on Saturday right before I went to spin class, just voted. Like, ain't no thing." It's really a great thing, and I think that all states should consider that, especially during this crisis.
That's right.
Okay, so speaking of elections in college football, let's talk about college football. I, for one, am distraught at the thought of not having college football. So a lot of my friends have been joking about it because they're like, "What does Taylor live for if not Alabama football?" I actually did a webinar last night. Go get some dogs barking.
I was kind of torn at the same time. It sounded like it's coming out of my mouth. It's pretty cool. Like, I have a dog.
Here, they're barking up there at the man cutting the grass. Mark, you talk about college football, and I'm going to mute myself till this is over.
Okay. So the college football story is really interesting right now because two conferences, well, I think four, but two major conferences have said they're not going to play. So the Pac-12 and Big Ten, the Big Ten's one of the best conferences in college football, have said we're not playing. And it looked like the college football season was going to be canceled for everybody. But there's a couple conferences, the SEC and the Big 12 and a couple others, and ACC said, we're playing. A lot of players said, look, this is important to us. We're playing. We think we're willing to take the risk to do that. And it kind of looked like the tide was shifting to no college football. Now it might be going back the other way where I'm seeing a lot of Pac-12 athletes who've had their season canceled say, no, we want to play. Look, we want health and safety. We want to play. And we've seen, of course, you can't do a bubble scenario, but we've seen the success of the NBA coming back with no problems. Baseball's had a couple issues, but they've come back. But there is a lot of college football players that want to play. And it's interesting the way the tide has turned from the media making it seem like there's going to be no season. Now it's like these conferences that have canceled are probably rethinking the same, like, oh, well, they're playing. We don't want to lose out on a chance of national championship, recruiting, all these other things that these college conferences that are playing are going to have a huge advantage.
Yeah, and speaking of the tide turning, Nick Saban actually – the dogs are barking so loud. Nick Saban actually said that he wanted to play. And my mom and I were on the phone about that the other day, just as the what was it? The Big Ten said that they weren't going to play, and that was the same in the Pac-12 and all of these big conferences. And then Nick Saban was like, listen, we've had like a 2% COVID rate with our athletic department. Yeah. They're safer here than they are anywhere else. And I'm like, if all these people would just use their brains and realize that they are keeping these athletes in tip-top athletic shape because they don't want anything to happen to them, they're not going to let them get exposed. They're not going to let anything happen to them. Let the boys play. Like, remember the Titans quote, let the boys play. And so my mom said it would be interesting with someone who has as much clout as Nick Saban has and has as much respect as him when he comes out to try to say, let them play, if that has any effect on the SEC.
And Dabo Swinney, too. I mean, two of the top coaches in both have said they want to play. And I think what it comes down to is that it makes no sense in the college to cancel college football, specifically if you're going to keep your campus open. They're way more likely to get it on campus than they are for football. And like you said, the football-related activities actually makes them probably less likely to do it with all these people. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And, of course, we take this seriously, and conferences can do whatever they want. But I will say the conferences that cancel, they're going to put themselves far behind. And a lot of these conferences make a bunch of money that can pay for all these things in order to do that. They're going to lose out on all this money. And guess what that means? Tuition's going to go up on these kids. It's already so high, and they're going to have to keep raising tuitions. Meanwhile, I mean, the SEC, ACC, these are going to be the most watched conferences like the whole year. Their ratings are going to go way up. They're going to get way more money. And Notre Dame's even joining the ACC for the year because they want to be able to play.
I think it's really interesting that we see, I mean, it's kind of like capitalism all around. Like, people love having an opportunity to do things, and where there is an opportunity, everyone goes there. And I don't know. I just think that it's very it's like a micro study of how like economics works and how the market works. Of if there is opportunity here, if you close out opportunity somewhere else, then people will go to where opportunity is in order to succeed. And I know that's kind of getting like meta and weird on this, but I've definitely thought about that a lot, and how we can kind of see an illustration of how capitalism works in the college football landscape right now.
That's right. And one more thing too, how risk assessment works. That's one thing that we're not figuring out. Yeah. It's like, look, these things are out there. People can make decisions based on what they think is important. We know COVID can kill people. We know that it has the ability to make people sick. We know it's possible to get, but people have to make their own risk assessment. They say, you know what? I'm going to take this risk that there's a 2% chance, whatever the chances I can get it or be sick with it, as opposed to be like, look, I can be throwing away millions of dollars to help me and my family by not playing. And ultimately, I don't feel like a lot of these guys are like, I'm in tip-top shape. Of course it's possible. I don't feel like I'm really at risk, even if I get it, that anything bad's going to happen. So I'm willing to take that small risk that something bad's going to happen in order to potentially make millions of dollars in the NFL.
Well, and there's an individual responsibility aspect too, where people are like, well, we can't play college football because what about the fans? Well, the fans make a decision. You make a decision if you want to go to the game or not.
Yeah.
I will risk it all to go to an Alabama football game. Other people might not. And I get it. And that's fine.
I won't risk it even if there's no disease. But
oh my gosh. Well, anyway, people that we are taking out, and we're doing this in a lot of things. You and Stephanie talked about the inconsistent COVID rules in bars and restaurants lately. We're taking out the aspect of personal responsibility. If you don't want to go to a bar, don't go to a bar. If you don't want to go to a restaurant, don't go to a restaurant. If you don't want to go to Disney World, don't go to Disney World. And if you don't want to go to a college football game, don't go to the college football game. I'm tired of the nanny state and all the crazies.
I want to say one more thing about it before we go. The whole shutdowns of businesses and all these COVID shutdowns, it's insane the way that some of these politicians, some of these people in the left are now saying, oh, it's the Republicans or the conservatives' fault that there's so much unemployment. It's like the entire reason there's so much unemployment is because you shut down businesses. And it is, we have to say this, it's not COVID that's responsible for these economic issues. A little bit, but it's the government's response to COVID that's responsible for these issues. And you can see, I mean, I just saw today that even though you can argue with what their response was, that Sweden's economy is doing the best in Europe. Not surprising because they didn't shut down. So I think that I can understand why you want to mix those things, but you can't say, oh, we need to shut everything down, and at the same time blame the people who are not asking to shut down for the economy tanking and jobs being lost. That's it. Okay, that's my soapbox.
I wish you could mic drop after that. No, it's a really good point. And actually, we've worked so hard over the last years, and that's going to kind of lead into our next topic. We pride ourselves at Beacon on working really hard to make sure that people can work and that the government gets out of people's way in times of pandemic or in times of no pandemic. And actually, the government sided with us this past week on one of those issues for the last 5 years.
Well, at least the judge did. I'm not sure the government did.
Well, she represents the government, kind
of.
Yeah,
but the other part that represents the government is the one who put this terrible law in place.
That's true. But we got the government out of the way for one of our great friends. Elias has been out of work for how many years now, Mark? I think
it's two since
a couple years. Yeah. Our friend Elias was a barber and now is again a barber in Memphis, and he was sold a fraudulent barbering license. Didn't know it. The barbering board came in to where he was working and said, hey, here's a big old fine. Also, you can't work because you didn't graduate from high school, which I don't know what algebra has to do with cutting hair, but whatever. Even though the cosmetology board doesn't require a high school degree. What is it like? Paramedics don't require a high school degree?
Yeah, paramedics, you don't need a high school degree. To be governor, you don't need a high school degree. And to be in the state legislature, you don't need a high school degree.
But to be a barber, apparently you do. And
Correct.
So we have been in court for years about Elias's case. And this week, Chancellor Martin agreed with us. That's her title, right? She's Chancellor.
Yep.
Agreed with us that having a high school diploma does not equate you to being qualified to be a barber. And now Elias can work. He can work without having to go back to school, without having to get his degree, his GED, anything. And it was just a really exciting and rewarding win because he dropped, if you haven't heard his story, he dropped out of high school to take care of his family. He has the kindest heart, and all he wanted to do was take care of his family and go and be a barber and cut hair because he loved it. And Braden argued the crap out of that case, and we came out victorious, and it was just a really exciting win.
And yeah, and so Elias cannot quite work until somebody gets his barbering license.
Yeah.
We can also question whether that's even a thing that should be out there. But
he's enabled to work now.
Yes. Once he gets that, he can go right to work. And it's just one of those. This is a great case because you can see kind of all sides of the political spectrum come together and be like, yeah, this is insane. It doesn't make any sense. We're hurting low-income people who just want to make a living. And from all accounts, Elias was an excellent barber. And he told me that he cut hair for the New York Yankees. Like he cut like really famous. And they're saying because of this high school degree that you can't do it. And it made no sense. It dragged on for 2 years. And it's hard. These are hard laws to overturn. These are hard to win in court. So you can tell it's so egregious that you can actually win one of these in court. And obviously, like you said, Braden did a great job, but it will hopefully allow the government of Tennessee and city governments to say, like, let's look at some of these regulations that stop people from working. Are these necessary, and do these protect health and safety? Is there any way that a barber having a high school degree protects health and safety? There is no argument for that. It's an insane law that, again, this is one of the examples that we can come together with people all across the political spectrum, people who might not agree with this sometimes, be like, look, let's work together because we all agree this is stupid. Except for the person who passed the law, everyone agrees this is stupid. So let's fix this. And we did. And Braden did a great job. And now because of that, not just Elias, but any barber who I could agree has kept them from working now has the ability to work. You know what happened when we got rid of the African hair braiding license? There's like 650 people who didn't have a license that started after we got rid of that.
Guys, 5 times as many women are braiding now. Maybe men too. I'm not sure. I just know the female braiders that came to testify with us. But 5 times as many people are braiding now than were when a license was required. That is huge. That is breaking down a massive barrier to employment in Tennessee. And since the Elias case was won, I've had other people actually call and say, like, hey, I work in a profession that also requires a high school diploma for my license. What happens with us? I mean, it's really starting this trickle effect of people saying, wait, these arbitrary boundaries that the government has put in place really are arbitrary and ridiculous. We got to do something about it. And honestly, I love when people feel empowered to do something. That's why I do what I do.
Absolutely.
So congratulations, Elias. Congratulations to our legal team, our whole team. If you have any questions about the case, you can read about it online, but this was just a really exciting day for all of us. Last topic up for discussion. Hopefully the dogs don't bark because this is the one I'm really excited about. It is National Book Lovers Week. And Mark doesn't really read. He can, I think, but he doesn't.
It depends.
But I, like I've said, I went to the beach last week and I read 5 books in 4 days. Really went crazy on that. I actually have a stack of 12 books sitting right in front of me right now. That's my summer reading list. But I think that I had a habit for being a voracious reader since I was a little girl. I've always read a lot. And I am going to give a book recommendation right now. Mark, if you have a book recommendation, think about it.
I do. I have.
You do?
Oh, yeah. It's a whole series.
Okay. Let me tell. Is it Harry Potter?
No. It's still not super mature, but it's not just a kid's book. It's more of an adult book.
Okay, so my book recommendation for right now, and be patient with me here, is Alex Trebek's autobiography. A lot of people think it's funny that I read it. Jeopardy's my favorite show. Alex Trebek, I think, is great. He was recently diagnosed with cancer. He's kind of getting his affairs in order and figuring out what the future for his family looks like. But this book is about the lessons that he's learned in life. All the chapters are super short, 2 to 3 pages, random things. It'll be about anything about horses to his marriage to his favorite Jeopardy contestants, his most memorable Jeopardy contestants. It's a really sweet and charming book. And it was a quick read. I read it in one day. It's like 300 pages. I read it in one day. Super easy. And it's just really great, sweet life lessons that I think that everyone should read because he really does have a heart of gold. I read a lot of other books. If you want other recommendations, let me know. But Mark, what's yours?
One thing that I read kind of in bunches where I'll like read a bunch for 3 months and then I won't read for another year. I go through that, but I mean, like that, it's almost like, but and it's been a while since I've done that, but I did talk to my girlfriend last night. I'm like, hey, one of the things when I move my new apartment, I want to get this nice recliner and I want to try to read more. But the 2 things that I would say, like I loved, and one's an autobiography too. It's called Too Fat to Fish. It's Artie Lang. It's incredible. It was New York Times #1 bestseller. But he's like he's a comedian tried to kill himself. It's kind of like an interesting story. But he talks about you would actually like it. I don't know if you know him. He's from he's on the Howard Stern show.
I wouldn't know that.
In a bunch of garbage movies, Mad TV he was on. But yeah, so he's great. And it was a really good reading. Like that was the first autobiography. I'm like, wow, it was funny and like kind of heartbreaking, but also uplifting. It was just this great book. But the other ones are just kind of more of like this is the one book series is the Alex Cross books by James Patterson. I love those. Oh God. It's about this detective in DC. And I think I've read the first, there's like 21 of them. I've read the first 13. I haven't read them for about a year, but I do want to pick it back up. But they're good. It's kind of like a detective series. And it's this, and they made 2. Have you heard of Along Came a Spider? It's more. Yeah, that's a James Patterson. That's an Alex Cross book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
One more recently where Tyler Perry plays him. That's just called Alex Cross.
I did not know that. I love mystery, true crime. I actually bought a book over the weekend.
It's not true crime, but it's just. Well,
I love true crime. Yeah, there's a book called Unspeakable Acts, and it's like some of my favorite books to read are like series of essays in a book. So it's like each chapter is a completely different story. I'm reading one right now called Someone Will Love You in All Your Broken Glory or All Your Damaged Glory, and it's just like essays about like funny, dark humor love stories. But another one that I bought was Unspeakable Acts, and it's just chapters of true crime. So I love mystery crime things like that. That's a good recommendation, Mark.
Let me say one more thing too. A lot of my friends who are like not in the they're into politics, but they don't do it for a career. They say like, "Oh, read this book about politics, or read this books about like this." I'm like, I don't want to read that in my free time. I work on that all day, and like I'm so interested in it, but like I need to disconnect. I don't want to read this Hayek essay for it's like I agree with that, and at work, sure, but I feel like my whole point is when I'm reading, I want to get away from that. That's my thing. I like to escape through reading. If I'm going to read, and that's why the Alex Cross books are great.
Yeah, that's I had a lot of friends who were like, "Did you read the John Bolton book? Did you read the book about this? Did you read this?" And I have 0% interest
Yeah,
in
I'll read the news articles about it, and that's a paragraph, and that's good.
Yeah, I'll read the New York Times book review of all these political books, and then I'm gonna go read Friends and Strangers or Pizza Girl or any of the hot like adult books that are on Jenna Bush Hager's Today Show reading list for the summer.
I feel like we need to change how we define this. Adult books does not sound like what we're talking about.
I mean, like I don't mean like teeny box books, like young adult books. I'm talking about like books that are suitable, like for adult women that Jenna Bush Hager or Reese Witherspoon or Oprah are saying to read this summer. That's what I'm reading.
Yeah, not the adult books that have the cardboard in front of them that you can't actually see. So not
I don't
those.
want to read that. I don't want to read that. So those are our book reviews for this time. I'm going to read Too Fat. You said it's Too Fat to Fish?
Too Fat to Fish. Yeah, I have it. Let me see. But I mean, you can probably get it for like $1. It's from 3 or 4 years ago, but it's so good. You'll like it. I promise.
Let's trade. I'll bring you my Alex Trebek book and you bring me that one.
I don't like Alex Trebek that much, but okay.
Fine. This is what I get all the time, people. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.